Dispatchers help callers on the worst days of their lives. For over 25 years, we've been there. A silent partner in millions of calls thanks to our redundant and diverse networks that ensure call delivery. Today, cities are bigger, traffic more congested, and the challenge is more complex. But you're never alone, because InDigital is quietly improving, implementing, and driving the next generation of 911, so you're supported in every situation. Make the switch at indigital.net.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
And the only description we had was a 20-something-year-old male. And in my head, I'm like, it's my brother. It's my brother. And there was nothing that gave that information away. He didn't have a car. They didn't give a clothing description. He was unresponsive, not breathing in the bathroom of this public fast food restaurant. And the worker who had found him wouldn't do CPR. I don't know if he was afraid or he just couldn't move. I don't know what that was, but I texted the officer and I said, I'm pretty positive it's him. He gets on scene, he calls my personal phone and he said, yes, it's him and it's not good. And I collapsed on the floor. I mean, every emotion, every picture that you imagine of your sibling as a baby, their first words when they walk, when they go to school, all the times you've spent with them, everything, it just came all flooding. And I went running into the kitchen and I called my husband. I called my brother who works in the same jurisdiction, who's a police officer. I'm very thankful he wasn't working that day and he didn't encounter that call. But I started calling everybody and I just sat there in shock. Did my brother really just be one of my calls?
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, a leader in next-gen core services, and a big shout-out, as always, to subscribers of the podcast. Thank you for everything, and it is January 6th, 2025. Oh, man. New year, and things are just ramping up already for this year. Classes coming up. Speaking engagements, different conferences that I'm going to be going to, just all types of things. We've got my version of Volume 1 of Imagine Listening coming out, and that'll be on actually next month, February 16th of 2025, and that is on the anniversary of the very first 911 call ever placed, and that was out in Haleyville, Alabama. And if you are ever out there in Haleyville, damn it, I'm mentioning this right now, and I can't remember the name of the restaurant, but there is a breakfast spot on top of a hill there in Haleyville, and oh my Lord, is it divine. If you like bacon and excellent biscuits and gravy, damn it, go to that place because it was superb. I'm sorry that I can't remember your name, restaurant, but you were great. Great service, just all of it. It was excellent. But that book is going to be coming out, so make sure to check that out, and just a ton of powerful episodes, stories coming from the 911 professionals from around the world. And I can't wait for you to just listen and see everything that's going to be coming up for this year. A lot of new things, and a separation between Within the Trenches podcast and the Imagine Listening podcast that is going to be coming up as well. That podcast is going to be stories only, where this one, we've got interviews, right? We've got stories, but it's an interview style. But Imagine Listening will be the story only. So fully immersive storytelling. And when it comes to storytelling with public safety and 911, accept no substitutes. Oh man, I am excited for not only this year, for all the powerful episodes and stories that are going to be coming out, but also for my guest today. And my guest today is Shana, and she is a 911 dispatcher out of the Massachusetts State Police. And I said it right. Awesome. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. It sounds stupid, but I sometimes like probably a lot of other people, I have to say Massachusetts in my head first really fast before I say it out loud because I feel like I've got a fat tongue or something. I don't know. Like I trip over it sometimes.
Lived here my whole life. I feel the same way.
Oh, okay. Well, good. I'm in good company. Oh, well, I am excited to have you here and to learn more about you and your story. And you also have an audience back
Yeah,
there.
hosts,
Very,
Axel and Riker back there.
very nice. They're chilling. For those who are listening, the audio piece. Two dogs. Oh, they're walking up right now. They're like, "Did you call us? Are we going out?" Uh, that is awesome right there. I love it. So again, I'm glad to have you on. We were going to actually meet a few months ago at the ranch. You had an emergency that you had to attend to, and I'm hoping everything was fine with all of that. But man, it would have been awesome to see you out there, and I hope that I get another chance to meet you or to see you out there at the ranch because that was something else.
For sure. I'm sad I couldn't go, but I heard that everybody had fun, and hopefully in the future I'll be able to go.
Yes, yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, it was a little colder than it usually is, but I mean in November, what do you expect? Even in Texas in the morning, it was pretty damn cold, but it was a lot of fun. So again, I'm happy to have you here, and I want to go ahead and just jump right in because you've got about 2.5 years in dispatch. But I want to know how you got started. Like, where does your story start? Let's go back in time. How did you get into public safety to begin with?
So I used to work at a local towing company as a dispatcher. So I was a tow truck driver and a dispatcher, and I loved it. It was a lot of fun. It was a good way to start learning how to dispatch. But I've been in the Army for 15 years, and when I was coming home from my second mobilization, my husband, who works as a police officer, recommended I work in the jurisdiction that he works in because they were hiring civilians. So while I'm overseas in Poland, I'm emailing and sending resumes, and they're like, "Oh, can we call you?" And I'm like, "No, I'm in Poland, but I'll be home in like a month, and then we can do what we need to do." But that's how it started, just a recommendation, and I got into it and just fell in love immediately.
Oh man. Well, first off, thank you for your service and everything that you have done. And
Thank you.
I have to ask as well the fact that you were working with a towing company and dispatching, but also towing the vehicles. And
Yep.
maybe you don't want to say, but I have to ask because I've always wondered myself when you like have those moments where you have to like repo a car. Well, actually, first off, have you ever had to do that before?
No, I've been
Oh,
involved in it, but it's a huge liability and safety issue. So I wouldn't want to do it, but I'll just go pick up, disabled motor vehicles or when the police need a tow. That was more my forte.
I was gonna say, like, did you have to go in like ninja style, and did you ever have any confrontations? Because being in dispatch, you end up taking calls where someone is going out there and they're like, I'm trying to repo this car. The owner is here right now, and it's not looking good. Like, I need somebody out here, and it just starts escalating really, really fast.
That's exactly what happened. Probably about 2 weeks ago with the state police. We get a call from Connecticut State Police, and they said that they have a tow truck driver who's basically being chased by somebody. They went up onto the flatbed and tried to take the car off, smashed their own car, took off, like they damaged the tow truck, their own car, and a repossession, and they ended up finding the person, but just
Oh,
very
dude.
escalating.
Holy hell. Yeah. I mean, you see some of those videos sometimes too on whether it be TikTok or Instagram Reels or Facebook or whichever YouTube, and you've got those moments where it's like about to go to blows and you don't know how it's gonna go, and then it ends up cutting off. It's like a show when it goes to commercial, you're like, "Oh,
Come on.
well, I guess I don't know what happened." But another question with that then, because you ended up going out there to pick up some of those vehicles. I mean, what is that like picking them up like let's just say like on the side of the highway or even just on the side of the road, because you only have so much room. And I've always, gone off as far as I can to the side to, so that no one ever feels like, oh my God, this person's going to hit me or something. How nerve-wracking is that?
It's pretty nerve-wracking. A lot of times, depending on what's wrong with the vehicle, you have to get down underneath, and you're going to be pulling a winch cable underneath it. So your head is on the ground right next to the highway. Of course, we try to work on the opposite side of the vehicle. You always try to stay against a guardrail or whatever it may be, but your head's on the swivel. I can't tell you how many people I've known that have been hit or killed just because people won't slow down or move over. They don't pay attention. They don't see us. So
Oh, jeez.
it was pretty scary. I mean, you get kind of used to it at a certain point. The state police and local jurisdictions are great about making sure that they have lights. And I've had another towing company actually stop behind my tow truck just to give me some extra lights, and I've always appreciated that.
See, that's pretty awesome right there when
Yeah.
you've got that type of support, even from other, companies and stuff.
Oh,
Because I
yeah,
mean, they know. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, they know what it's like in there. So how long, were you doing that before you made your switch over?
I did that for 6 years. I was at
Mhm.
the company for 6 years. I got my Class A, so I have my commercial driver's license. That's what I was doing in the Army. So I drive like large tractor trailer type for logistics. So it transferred over really easily to the towing world.
Nice. Oh, awesome. So you had all of that experience already coming into it. Then you go there, but now you're starting to get into dispatch. Did you get a chance to do a sit along or anything like that?
um, no, not really.
Oh, so you just went in.
Yeah, yeah, not really.
Oh, crap.
It was
Okay.
a little bit. I mean, civilian versus military is different, but it was quite a change.
So what was eye-opening? And also how big was the center that you were at? Because you were at a center before, right? Before you went to the state?
Yes, it was a very large center. It's a regional center,
Mhm.
so I mean, just for like evening shift for them is 7 dispatchers in the room at a time. So
Oh, damn.
their call volume's pretty high.
So you end up going through like the hiring process. You don't get to sit along. So when you find out that you're going to be going in and you've got this job, you're going to be starting this profession now, and you walk into the center, what is that like for you? Like, can you kind of paint a picture for those who are watching and listening? And like, what is it that you're seeing when you walk in, and what are you feeling as well? Were you overwhelmed at all?
I was very nervous. I feel like I had this. I had to have this um, basically view of myself and everything else because I felt like I was representing my husband
Hmm.
because everyone knew me as his wife, and then my brother was hired there as well. So I feel like I had this expectation of what I had to be, and I had to be a really good dispatcher, and I had to learn. I just remember feeling really overwhelmed, just hearing all the phones and the noises and this is going off and that's going off. I was super stressed for a while, a good while.
You take me back because I felt that way as well. Not so much with, I mean, of course, with the first place that I was at, the small PD, the one seater, it's just me for 8 hours. But walking in and seeing all that stuff, even in 2001, which you got the big CRT fat monitors, like nothing was flat screen. But even that was kind of overwhelming. But it was when I went to the central dispatch where there's now more people working at a time that I remember walking in and it's just monitors, consoles, people, and watching them do things that you would think an octopus would need to be doing because it's just moving hands over and over and eating at the same time. And yeah, that can be overwhelming to end up thinking, am I going to be able to do this?
It was extremely overwhelming. I knew that emotionally I could handle it just
Hmm.
because of my military service, but I felt that I just had this high expectation for myself, and I'm such a perfectionist that I just wanted to do everything right. I wanted to be this superstar dispatcher. I wanted to save lives and make sure officers were safe and get the firefighters here and do everything. And it's very quickly became something that I felt was more than I expected very quickly.
It's a lot of people end up saying something similar where they get in and they're like, It's not like it is on TV." You're like, "No, it's not."
At all.
Like, there's so many moving parts and so many things to memorize, so many different policies and procedures, and then working with a team and figuring out how they work together, but also, you're with your trainer, and depending on how that training is set up, you're on what we would call the umbilical cord, and,
Yep.
you've got people listening and well, you're listening first, right? And then you hear certain calls, and sometimes those trainers look at you and they're probably wondering, is she going to stay?"
Yeah. I had that. I was training somebody and we took a really, really tough call where someone had sliced their own wrists and the child was on the phone with us and she kind of just froze and I took over the call and she ended up not coming back. And I don't know if it's specifically because of that call or she learned in that moment the job wasn't for her
Mm.
or what it was. But I remember that day thinking, this is a make or break call. This is one of those things where you're going to know if this is for you or not. And that was for me when I first started. The adrenaline, when you first get that call and you're going through it, and then when you're done, you feel it. You feel it. It's either a passion or it's not. And luckily for me, it was a passion.
There are a lot of folks who've said something similar where they say it gets into your blood really fast, but you also find out really fast whether it is for you or not. And luckily for me, I was just like you. It got into my blood really quick, and I don't know if it's because I like the adrenaline rush as well a little bit of and what I mean by the adrenaline rush is that rush of wanting to help, because then it's like, okay, who's the next person that I can help? And I had someone, a couple episodes ago who said something similar where they're like, it's addicting. You're helping someone, and then when it's done, who do I help next? Where do I go? What do I do? Because that's in your blood, and you're wanting to help and wanting to help. And but the other thing that sucks though, and I don't know if you feel this way or not, but after that adrenaline dump and you're just kind of there, it's that part is exhausting as well. That's one of the parts that I remember a lot after taking hard call after hard call after hard call and finally getting a moment to take a breath, and you get that adrenaline dump and you're just kind of sitting there like, I don't know if I need a cup of coffee to wake up now or what, but damn, what is happening?
So many emotions. So many emotions.
Right, yeah, it's an emotional roller coaster for sure. And, so how long did your training last?
Um, I remember I got hired in July. I think I was clear in about October. And that was it felt like it was going by really slow, but at the same time I felt that's it. When they were like, "You're clear." It's like, "That's it? That's all I get?" But I never saw this one thing happen. But you're not gonna learn everything in training. You have to figure it out. But I just so stressed. And then the first time I ever got forced, there for my first 16-hour shift, it was in that same week.
Oh, man. Oh,
So yeah.
we have a similar start, my friend, because with when I ended up going to the central dispatch, now I'm working with a team and it's 12-hour shifts there. And that first weekend that I was by myself, I was no longer in training. I got forced in as well, and they're like, "Welcome to dispatch, Ricardo." I was like, "All right."
Welcome to clearing. Here's your first course.
Yes, exactly. Oh man, it is. Yeah, that is something. So you end up going through your training and such. So you're with the state now, but before, were you doing all three disciplines of public safety, like police, fire,
Yes.
and EMS? Okay,
Yes.
so
It police too. So I'm
oh,
dispatching state police. I'm doing all three. I dispatch for 15 smaller jurisdictions.
oh, no way. Okay, cool. Because it some state police, they don't do, like, all of it or anything like that. It's usually just, like, accidents and such or whichever, so holy hell. Okay, so, um, I wanted to ask you this, as well. Do you feel like what you were doing um, before you got into dispatch kind of prepared you a little bit for what you were gonna be dealing with and maybe some of the folks that you were gonna be talking to on the phone as well?
For sure. I definitely had the customer service baseline. Obviously, it's a lot different in a tow company where you don't have enough money to pick up your car. We're just not giving you your car. You can just be like, all right, well, when you get the money, let us know. Click. You can't do that on a 911 or, kind of act that way. But
Right.
at the same time, it just gave me an understanding of how dispatching works, how it's a big puzzle and you're just trying to get all the pieces moving to the right spot to get things accomplished. So obviously, and then being married to my husband, I knew a lot about the jurisdiction already. I had grown up there, I knew everything. So it definitely prepared me. I knew a lot of the lingo, I knew the area, I knew the customer service, and we had in towing for police calls, you only get 15 minutes. So from the time that they call you on a contract, you have to get the tow truck there in 15 minutes. So you're scrambling to try to get somebody to move quick enough to get to that call, and it really that was adrenaline too, or a big crash. So I was very used to this go, 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 but it wasn't life or death. Nobody was going to die if I didn't get a tow truck there. People were going to be mad at me, but it was a lot different.
Oh, man. Yeah, so you're definitely in training.
Yeah,
You
for
you were
sure.
de you were
For sure.
definitely in training, especially for that piece of people potentially getting mad, at you for whatever things because, in 911, that happens as well. People get mad at you and they might swear at you, call you all types of names and everything else. But one of the things that I would tell some of my trainees, or even now, when I talk to people, because they would say, "How did you handle all of that?" And like, well, you gotta think about the fact that they're probably not usually like this, and probably would not be saying all of this types of shit to a person,
No,
but they're living through their nightmare right now.
it's true. It's so true.
Yeah, and they just want some help, and yeah, it sucks when someone is just like, "Just get them here now," and you're like, "I'm trying." But, again, it's the same thing, like, I've talked to some people where I've said, "Have you ever been the person to call in the 911?" And they're like, "Yeah, I completely forgot everything." Like like, I was, one of those callers that called in and, whatever happened, and I would say, "Yeah," like, even us who are super prepared, who know how it goes down and everything, you you sometimes forget, and it's that in that emergency, in that moment, everything goes out the window, or you end up being like me, who had to call for an elderly lady who had fallen and it was just right outside an AFC home, and we go out there. I'm trying to help her up and everything, and the nurses that are there, they come out and they're like, "Oh," I don't remember her name, but they were just like, "Oh, Ethel, what are you doing out here now?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Like, are you guys gonna call 911?" They're like, "Oh no, she'll be fine." Like, she wants an ambulance though, so I called 911 and I start giving all of the information like down the line of questioning. And the the dispatcher goes, "Are you a dispatcher?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, this is Ricardo from Allegan." And they're like, "Oh, what's up, man?" But I didn't give him a chance, and afterwards I was like, "What a dick." Like me, like, "What a dick, dude." Like, you need to let them do their thing, and I thought I was helping by jumping in and saying everything right off the bat, but, and who knows, maybe it was helping, but afterwards I thought, "Oh, man, I think I was kind of a dick." Like, because I didn't give them a chance. I didn't give them a chance to do their thing, and I thought I was helping, and I don't know. I'm overthinking it, obviously, but um, a lot of times people forget, so they end up just saying a bunch of shit, and you have to take it and just talk them through the entire situation. Um, did you find, like, from transitioning from what you were doing before, whether it was, in the military or also going into working for a wrecking company, that it was a hard transition at all? Because you're, like, hands-on with a lot of things, right? But now you're on the phone and you're not hands-on. Even though right, certain situations, you have your own protocols and such that you have to adhere to, because, I mean, the liability purposes as well.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like it was only hard because I feel helpless sometimes on the phone. You can hear everything that's going on, but you can't see it. And a lot of times with towing, I'll even get pictures, if it's a crash and I'm like, do you need this product or this product? And they'll be like, oh yeah, I'll send you a picture. And then you can see the crash. Sometimes you'll get a bunch of calls into 911 and they'll say it's a serious crash and it's a fender bender, but you have no idea and no one's telling you, do I need to start this or this? It just feels, I felt very helpless in the beginning, but I started using it to my advantage to hear different things. It's almost like my hearing became so much better. I can't see you, but I can hear, oh, it sounds like you have a dog in the background. Can I talk to you about your dog so maybe you'll feel a little better and you won't be in so much pain? Just, it helped my other senses keen up a little bit for sure. But I felt very helpless in the beginning. I felt very wired to a computer. Felt stuck.
Oh, I definitely can understand what you're saying with that as well, because you just want to reach through the phone, right? You want to reach through, and even just to give someone a hug, just to be like, I'm here with you. But I mean, that also is how powerful your voice is, to letting them know, you're not alone, I'm here with you, we're going through this together. But yeah, you feel helpless sometimes, where you just want to reach through and say, it's going to be okay, I'm here with you. That's one of those hard things. And then you add that with the fact that we don't always get closure, and
Yeah.
that just is even more of a one-two punch there, where you're like, damn, I hope that person ended up okay. Or, like before things like rapid SOS and stuff, I would take phone calls where someone would be like in a state game area lost, and their cell phone would cut out and we can't find them. And then I'm driving home for 45 minutes just hoping and praying that that person ended up finding a way to get out, because the cell phone carriers couldn't find them. And we had people going out there. Sometimes people would be able to call back, and I'd have to say, do you see the flashing lights? Do you hear the siren? and then guide them to that. But other times, still wonder. Hopefully, that person was okay. That's one of the hardest things with this profession, is that closure piece. But sometimes we get that gift of closure, and it definitely helps. So, you go through all of your training and such, and well, even as you're going through training, I'm sure you're taking calls during all that time. Do you remember your first call, or even some of those earlier calls that you took during that time?
I feel like I was somewhat fortunate in the beginning that I had taken a lot of um, very simple calls. A sick person, a fall, a this call, a few domestics here and there. It was a good amount of time before I had actually had anything that really stood out to me,
Hmm.
which I felt like I was kind of fortunate. I got to learn to get through calls quickly, how to get my words correct. It wasn't the first call that I had taken where it was traumatic. But then it just started happening. It was like every time I went into work, I was getting some kind of call that was boiling up inside. And I very quickly became a supervisor there. So I think I became a supervisor there in maybe March or April. And I had just gotten on the floor in October. So very quickly I had, yeah, it was it was definitely fast. And it was a lot on my shoulders to move into that point. I don't remember the very first call I took. And I can't even tell you the last call I took a couple days ago because they all kind of mend together. It's the specific ones that you remember that stay with you. And there's always a handful of those.
Right. And sometimes I mean even now with some phone calls, I'll be talking with friends or my siblings or something, and I'll just start with, there was one time in dispatch where, and I tell the story, and then afterwards I'm just kind of sitting there, and my siblings or friends or whoever I'm with at the time, they're like, "Are you okay?" And I'll say, "Yeah, no, I am okay. I hadn't thought about that call in years." Like it just came out of nowhere. And it's like that sometimes where you're going from call to call to call, and they end up just kind of crashing into each other. And some details you're talking about out loud might be from a different call, but they're so similar that again, they just kind of um, crash in there together. So, you've got all this time. You end up getting forced pretty much right off the bat,
Yeah.
and you get to learn what that's all about as well. Did you have, like, when you were taking your calls, but also when you went to radios, were there any point in time where you were on radios? I guess that was overwhelming as well, because a lot of times, like for me specifically, when I was training at the central dispatch and I got to radios, I wanted to do such a good job that even in radio traffic, I would look at my trainer when an officer would say something on the radio, and before I keyed up, I would look really quick and say, "It's just 10-4, right? That's just the response, or am I supposed to say something else?" And she she would go, "Just say 10-4 really quick, 10-4, Central 10-4, whatever." And then I would look back and she would go, "Try not to worry so much about what you're going to respond with, because if you say something wrong, I will let you know, or the officers will let you know." And I remember saying, "That's what I don't want." Like, I don't want them to give me shit. And she would go, "They're gonna give you shit no matter what. Like, even
Yeah.
if you do it right, maybe your voice cracks or something. Someone is gonna give you shit. So stop trying to be such a perfectionist." And I would say, it's like from my upbringing, man. Like, I just want to do a good job. That's all. I just want to do a good job. It's not that, excuse me, I want to be perfect. It's just, I just want to do a good job. And they're like, and we appreciate that. Keep that mindset, but don't let it fuck you up that much that you don't know whether to say 10-4 or okay. They're like, it's the
Yeah.
same thing. It's an affirmative.
Radios in the beginning for sure. I was always, like I said, anxious again because my husband was there, and I didn't want people to be like, "Wow, your wife sounds like a clown on the radio. What's her problem? You can't tell her
Added pressure.
how to do this." But of course he was always supportive, and I eventually got really, really good specifically for that jurisdiction. It was so super hard to train. It's a busy, busy city. Lots of domestics, lots of hot calls, gun calls, and that specific jurisdiction. I trained on it. I was super particular about it. Um, I could dispatch anything and everything in there, and it would be fine. I would feel that in the beginning I was so stressed. I was feeling like nauseous because I just had this. I have to get them there. I have to get this done. I have to do it right, you know, and just worried about what people thought of what I was saying or how I was doing it. When I shouldn't have cared that much. I shouldn't have cared that I'm sorry you have to go to your second report call today. I don't just go to the call. If after you go to the call, it's over with. But I was always so worried that judging and just everything. And I feel like that's how my brain kind of works, is I'm always worried about the next thing that's going to happen. But radios, and I loved radios. Loved it. That was my forte. That's where I was happy. I'm still much happier on a radio. Once you get over that initial shock, like your first bolo, your first this, your first that, your first traffic stop, then it just becomes second nature. You don't have to think about it anymore.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because once I got over that little hump as well, and all those firsts, especially when someone calls out saying they're chasing someone, and you're like,
Yeah,
"Oh shit!" Like, "Oh my god!" Like, "Okay, here we go," because it's you can train and run scenarios all you want. However, when it actually happens, it starts kicking in. Sometimes some of that stuff goes out. It comes back as you're going through it, right? But that initial shock, like, oh fuck, okay, here we go, and then you go through it, and then when you're done, you're like, oh, I like radios. Like, no, this is good.
I can't remember the first pursuit, and that's crazy to think about because it was probably pretty intense. But I had two officers that were pursuit happy. It seems like they always got into a pursuit, and we started getting this connection where I knew what he wanted for me during his pursuit. It just make sure everything happens the way he needs it. He wants this piece of information, I already have it ready for him. He wants this done, I already have it ready for him. So it became so comforting and so easy. But in the beginning, I just felt so sick, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, I'm putting in the street names, but should I be doing something else? Should I be trying to do this? I don't know. Just constantly.
See, and it's good. I feel like it's good to have a little bit of that because you're being vigilant, right? You're really focused, you're dialed in, and you're watching. Especially when like a timer pops up and you're like, checking on a status or doing whichever. But yeah, sometimes right in the beginning, it can be excessive because there's so much, and the people that are out in the field while you are basically watching over them. I mean, that's a huge responsibility, but also that's a lot of fucking pressure. And it's just everything that's going on. But also for you, like you mentioned, your husband is out there as well, who's kind of listening. And I not just that, but the fact that, let's just say, you're giving something out over the radio, he's heading there, and it's a high priority complaint, or you stop all traffic, keep all that main traffic there, and everyone goes to another channel, and that he's out there. And I worked with a few people where I would say, how do you do that? Like, how are you on the radio or even on a different console knowing that your loved one is out there? And a lot of times they would say, I just I just know that he has his training, but also his brothers and sisters out there to help protect him and or her, and what is going on. And I hold on to that. I'm like, you're a lot stronger than I am. Like, I've never dealt with that. I've never been in that situation. It makes sense, right? But um I can't even imagine it.
It's definitely a lot when you think about it. We had in the city next to us. There was a undercover officer who was shot in the face. They believe it was gang related. I mean, the state police ended up going out full force. I mean, they were hunting these guys down, and
Mhm.
that officer did survive. But the job, my husband's a detective too, so at that point, who knows what could happen just watching a house, and something like that could happen even to the patrolmen on the streets. I've become really good friends with these guys, and I talk to them, and then all of a sudden are they in serious danger? What can I do to help them? I can't see what they see. What can I do? What can I do? And I just remember pacing in the room for a bunch of calls, barricade calls, this call, that call, just hoping that everybody's going to be okay, everything's going to be fine. It's just, I just, I loved to hate it, basically.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And there have been some folks who have said that when they're on calls that they don't they don't want to put the phone down. And I did the same thing with a few of my own calls. And people would ask, like, why didn't you just hang up? I'm like, because I needed to listen. I needed to make sure that that person was going to be okay. Even if it turned out that they didn't make it, at least I knew, versus hanging up and then just like never finding out or something, because I've gone to a different call, and it gets away from you. Yeah, you can look it up, but um when you take high priority calls like that and you're going to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, it kind of goes out of your head until you're like driving home and you're thinking, oh, I need to check on that when I go back. And sometimes you remember to do it and sometimes you don't. And it's an interesting profession,
For
for
sure.
sure. Yeah. And it can be rewarding. There are a lot of rewarding spots as well in 911, but there are also a lot of hard times. And when you are, and I kind of mentioned this, or I did mention this to you in the beginning before we started recording. I talked about my grandmother and stuff. I was working in that county that I grew up in, so I had friends, I had family, and when you work in the county that you grew up in or that you live in, eventually you might take phone calls from people that you know. And so as we kind of segue and we're going in towards like kind of the wrap up of this episode as well, um, and if you feel comfortable talking about it, of course, there was a call or some calls, some situations, some stuff that had happened before you made the transition, I believe. Um, but I just want to ask you about this, a call or situation that kind of sticks with you.
So back in 2023, I was sitting. Well, let me start from the beginning. I was assigned a midnight shift.
Hmm.
So that morning, we had gotten a call for somebody was sleeping at a table at a fast food restaurant gas station. And so the cashier wouldn't go check on the person. She was at the register and she just kept saying, send somebody over here. And I got tired of fighting with her. I'm like, okay, we'll send the police. So I go home that morning. I had to be back for the evening shift for overtime. I look at the call logs and I notice that the person assigned to that call, the person tagged, is my little brother, who was at that table at 6:30 in the morning, apparently passed out. So he was told to be on his merry way, and he had left that morning. I was assigned to sit at the police, so that jurisdiction's police, on the overtime shift. And I remember texting, his first name's Mike. I remember texting Mike, the officer who works in that area. I said, I think my brother's in the area. If you could just, keep an eye out for a skinny kid in his 20s. And he's like, oh, okay, whatever, no big deal. The shift gets super busy. I don't really think about it again. And behind me, I can hear the trainee saying, can you check his breathing? And of course, everybody hears that in the room and everyone just kind of stops, like, where is it? So it was in that jurisdiction and it was at a local fast food restaurant. And the only description we had was a 20-something-year-old male. And in my head, I'm like, it's my brother. It's my brother. And there was nothing that gave that information away. He didn't have a car. They didn't give a clothing description. He was unresponsive, not breathing in the bathroom of this public fast food restaurant. And the worker who had found him wouldn't do CPR. I don't know if he was afraid or he just couldn't move. I don't know what that was, but I texted the officer and I said, I'm pretty positive it's him. He gets on scene, he calls my personal phone and he said, yes, it's him and it's not good. And I collapsed on the floor. I mean, every emotion, every picture that you imagine of your sibling as a baby, their first words when they walk, when they go to school, all the times you've spent with them, everything, it just came all flooding. And I went running into the kitchen and I called my husband. I called my brother who works in the same jurisdiction, who's a police officer. I'm very thankful he wasn't working that day and he didn't encounter that call. But I started calling everybody and I just sat there in shock. Did my brother really just be one of my calls? Did my 22-year-old brother just become one of my calls. And it didn't make sense to me at all. It wouldn't click for a long time. I was very detached from it, and I still feel like I'm a little detached from it. It doesn't feel real. What were the odds of me being there on an overtime shift and knowing that it was him? I'm so thankful for the officers that day. They kept me in the loop. They checked on me, and for that, after that happened, the trauma related to that room, I couldn't walk into the room. I felt that I was never going to be able to be a 911 dispatcher again. How could I ever go back in there and take a call for an overdose? How could I ever do that when my own brother didn't make it? How does someone die in a public place? No one noticed. Nobody had enough to save him, but I'm saving everybody else. I'm on the phone saving this person, that person, and I'm jealous and I'm angry. But I took all of that pain and I just remembered that I can help other people still, and I can do it. It's going to take time to heal. And this is really one of the first times I've ever really talked about it, because it was a lot of emotions. It's still a lot of emotions, but I want to help other people, and I want to make sure that people get what they need. And I want to make sure that nobody ends up like my brother did.
Thank you for having the courage to share this story, for what everything that you do. And I don't know. Of course, like you said, it's still really fresh, right? It was just from a year ago, and still a lot of emotions and everything that you're going through, and maybe one day, like, it'll definitely click. There'll be this first a full circle moment or whatever. But just listening to you share the story and the amount of people that were there to support you, excuse me, I almost feel like, what what would that have been like had you not had you found this out not being there, or being maybe just at home by yourself? Maybe, because maybe you were there and it happened that way because of that amount of support that you had. Like you said, everyone was there to help you, and to help you get through it as much as possible. And also, you now have kind of this mission, right, where you don't want others to end up going through this, and you wanted to be able to help um anyone else that you might be able to. That's just kind of my take on it, right? um of course, you you went through this. You've got your own ideas or thoughts of what, why this might be, that it happened. But and it's cliche to say, but I feel like sometimes there are some things that it happens a certain way because of what's going to come after that. And again, maybe it happened there because of the amount of support that you had around you.
I
um
have to agree. My mother passed away from an overdose. And that was before they had the Good Samaritan law, and that's before Narcan was so readily available. And that it was just a trauma after trauma. But I would love to get into something that helps educate or helps anything in that relation, to try to work through my own trauma and just be able to help one person. Just get anything I can do.
Well, my condolences as well. And I just love your passion, and what you said just now, that you want to be able to get into something where you are able to help others, where you're able to share your story, and everything that has happened. So, as you said, walking back into that center, just knowing, like, of course, going through all of that happened, and just feeling like, I don't know if I can do this and be here because of the trauma that comes from being there in the situation with your brother, and all of that. You end up leaving from there, and now you're working at the state police. How much time was that in between that you ended up switching?
I started with the state police um, in September of 2024. So I had spent some time working through the emotions and trying to get through all the trauma. I'll never forget the first night back after I had a structure fire. I had a third alarm structure fire. That first night I come back after my brother's death, and luckily there were no casualties, but I just remember being so panicked that it was like that. My heart sank. Can I handle any more death? Anybody passing away that I don't even have to know them? Could I handle this? And I got through it, and it like revitalized me. Like it made me feel whole again. And every time I would go into that room and I would sit in that corner in that chair and I would hear a phone ring, I would be worried, is it my dad? Can't be my dad. My dad's not, no, it can't be my dad. It can't be this person. It can't be my husband. It can't be this. And I would just keep reeling and reeling and reeling. And I was falling apart for a while. That room really just triggered me a lot. And so I figured maybe if I went somewhere else, I would have a fresh start. People wouldn't look at me when I was taking an overdose call and wonder if they have to barge in and take over because I'm going to panic when I'm on the phone. Nobody knew my story when I went somewhere else. So I figured it was a fresh start. And so far it's been good. I mean, I just got off training maybe about a month ago. So I'm still learning the ropes there, and it's a lot of change, but it's going to be good change. It's going to be good change. I'm still helping people. It's just a lot less call volume.
Right.
Just different kinds of calls.
Do you feel like if you, and maybe you've thought about this, maybe not, but do you feel like if you hadn't gone back, you might not have gone back at all?
I don't think I would have gone. If I didn't go back, I wouldn't have gone back at all. And I feel like I would have really spiraled out of control. I think that I really would have been, why didn't I just go back? I should have just worked through it. Maybe I should have sat somewhere, requested to sit in a room and only sit at a certain position and maybe not call take for a little while and work on radios or do this or that. And I don't think I would have went back.
Well, for one, I love that you went back, but I love even more that you were aware of these different things, because sometimes people aren't that aware and they go back into something that kind of hurts them later on, and they realize later on, oh, maybe I should have made a slight change, or maybe I should have, like you're saying, maybe I should have sat at a different console, or maybe I should have thought about going to um a different agency or something to start out fresh. And sometimes people will end up stuck, or they just finally snap and they're like, I can't do this anymore. And they leave, and that's okay, right? That's okay for someone to leave. But I love the fact that you were aware enough with your own feelings and how you were feeling and what you needed for you, because that's the other thing. We help so many people. We don't choose us. We don't choose ourselves, and we don't help ourselves because we're always on the go. We're always, it's our job, right, to help everyone else, but we forget about us. And so I love the fact that you chose you, and that you decided that maybe making a change, maybe going to a different center and starting out fresh was going to be the thing. Because listening to you from the beginning till now, you obviously love what you're doing,
I
and
do.
you feel like you have, that purpose. It's there, it's in your blood. From the service in the military to everything up until now, it's in you. And so I commend you for being aware of yourself, your feelings, and going to a different place to start out fresh and continue doing what it is that you love to do.
I appreciate you. This has been therapeutic in and of itself. I didn't know I needed this. I didn't know I
Well,
needed this that much.
I I have enjoyed having you on this I could talk to you for hours, man. Like this
Same.
this has been a lot of fun, and just listening to your story, but also the things that you have in mind for what you want to do in the future. And I think I have a few people that I can connect you with, to explore that a little more. But before we get to that, and we'll talk about that offline, but I have one last question for you as we go
Sure.
into the wrap up of this. And so you've got a few years into public safety and everything, and everything that you've been doing. But even after all of that, some people would think, I mean, it's only 2.5 years. What could happen? Obviously, a lot can happen in 2.5 years. Shit, a lot can happen in 2 months. And I had a guest a couple episodes ago. They were only on for 2 months, and they were loving it, but a lot of stuff has happened to them. So also, so for you in your 2.5, almost 3 years now in public safety, if you could go back in time to talk to yourself at the beginning, what would you tell yourself? And that's not to really change anything, right? Because I feel like there's a lot of stuff that we go through in our lives that bring us to the present day. Sometimes there's some hard lessons to learn. Sometimes there are, opportunities or whichever. So it's not to change anything, but just simply to go back and talk to yourself, to maybe give yourself a little bit of advice. So if you could go back in time to talk to yourself in the beginning, what would you tell yourself?
Just to take care of myself. It was simple as that. I was pouring from an empty cup for a long time. I was so worried about everybody else around me. I wasn't worried about myself. And I always felt sick or mentally unwell or this or that. And I just always felt like I was spiraling. But then I would come into work and I'd feel like I have a purpose. And then I go home and I'd be like, well, not doing anything, but I don't feel good when it was a mess. And I wish that in the beginning I had started taking care of my mental health. I wish that I had just take care of myself, go take a day off and go sit by the pool or go talk to a different kind of therapist or do this for myself. I never really did that. I just worked.
Well, thank you again. And that is perfect advice to be able to give yourself and anybody else who's watching and listening to be able to take from you as well. So thank you for everything that you do, for being on. It has been an honor to have you. I had a lot of fun with you. Thank you for everything.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
So I will be right back here with you in just one moment. And for those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you ever want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that is going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on social media and so many other things. The easiest way to do this, however, is to simply go to links.co/WTT podcast. And that's links with 2 i's.co/WTT podcast. And you'll find everything there: email, social media, where to follow, where to hear the latest episode, where you can also schedule an episode with me. So the button is right on there. And whether you are new to dispatch, seasoned, or retired, I would love to have you on the show. I've been doing this for over a decade. This is my passion, and I would love to get your story out there to literally millions around the world. So check me out on there as well. You can also find where to pre-order book 1 of Imagine Listening, where to buy book 2 of Imagine Listening as well. You can also find a link for, I think it's about 250 hours, free hours of continuing education for 911 professionals. And then if you are looking for any dispatch or podcast merchandise, there's a link on there as well. So once again, links with 2 i's.co/WTT podcast. You can see this on Facebook, YouTube, as well as X and LinkedIn Live. I've got clips on Instagram Reels as well as TikTok. So you can find all of that stuff on there. And then you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone. And we will see you all in the next one.
You just listened to a Code 7 Network podcast. If you have any questions or would like to be a guest on the show, send an email to WTTpodcast@gmail.com.